Greetings, humans. Welcome back to the Black Pill. Today's lesson is debate. So, I'm thinking about doing a series on bad debate tactics, and sort of a weakness on that is I'm not specifically an expert on bad debate tactics, but I am a psychologist, and so I can draw some inferences, and I know how brains and minds and so forth work. Maybe I can offer something informative about this. But honestly, what you should do is go look at Ian Danskin. I just forgot the name of his thing. Anyway, go look at Ian Danskin in the Alt-Right Playbook. He's probably much better than I'm going to be on this. But let's see how far we get. So the idea is debate is not a good means at arriving at truth, because that's not what it's for. And so in this series, I'm going to highlight a few quite common bad debate tactics, the unfair debate tactics that get people to believe things that are true that are in fact false, to get you to vote for people who don't deserve your faith or your trust. All right, so here we go. Debate is a rhetorical exercise. Rhetoric, I don't know if you can see this. I put it on the whiteboard though to make it feel like it's a classroom lesson. Rhetoric is the art of changing minds on issues. This is oratory. This is Cicero and stuff, right? It's a set of tactics and practices and means of presentation that at the end, if my debate team is winning, more people in the audience have changed their mind to my position than have changed their mind to my opponent's position. And that has nothing to do necessarily with uncovering things that are truth. Science is looking for truth. We don't have it. In fact, we never possess it. We never believe we have the truth. We always maintain the conceit that we're searching for it, right? And it is exactly that in rhetoric, we're saying we have the truth and we're defending those ideas that makes it weak. I know what's true. My opponent is wrong, and these things are false, and they're big poopy heads. Whatever tactic it takes to persuade. Science is not persuasive, and in the end, that's exactly what makes the finding of science persuasive. And see what I did just there? That was equivocation. Two uses of persuasive in the same sentence with two different meanings and implications. All right. Debate doesn't lead to truth because that's not what it's for. Defending ideas entrenches them. So I just did a video maybe a month ago. The things that you believe most strongly are the most likely to be false because of cognitive dissonance. The more you defend an idea, the more you believe that idea. Because if you're going to spend cognitive energy and social capital defending an idea, you wouldn't do that for ideas that are false, right? You're smart, aren't you? And good and sane. And so why would a smart, good, sane person spend a bunch of mental energy defending the idea, for example, that vaccines cause autism, or the world is flat, or Donald Trump is a good man? You wouldn't do that. And so if you were wrong about that, you'd have to be stupid or crazy. And if you were lying about that, you'd have to be evil. And so when you defend an idea, you believe it more strongly because of cognitive dissonance. So the things you believe most strongly are the most likely to be false. The literature supports this. My own experience supports this. In human growth and development class, there's a issue and counterpoint in the textbook we use about, do parents really matter? If you tell your kids not to smoke and you try and influence them away from smoking, does that have any effect, or is their peer group just more influential than you? It doesn't matter what you say about smoking to your kids. If their friends smoke, they will smoke. And so I used to assign people teams. All right, this side of the room, you're going to read all the literature that supports the idea that parents matter. And this side of the room, you're going to read all the literature that supports the idea parents don't matter. And you have half an hour to prepare and then half an hour to make your case either way. And I just found that whatever idea people were randomly assigned to defend, they believed more strongly at the end of that session because of cognitive dissonance. And the literature is good on this idea. When you defend a position, you believe that position more strongly. And so, I've been to a bunch of debates. I went to a bunch of faith-based debates. Is religion good for society or bad for society, that kind of thing. And at the end, everyone's just more firmly entrenched in their position. No one's mind really changes. And honestly, there's nothing going on in those debates that should change people's minds because no one has presented any empirical data, right? They've just used words in a convincing manner and used what passes for logic with people who don't really understand logic all that well. Science isn't perfect. Yeah, sure. I buy that for sure, because people do it. But look, man, nothing is perfect. The fact that democracy is rigged towards Republicans doesn't mean you should throw your hands up and not vote. It means you should drag more of your friends out to vote. Just because something is flawed doesn't mean that you have to give up on it and just believe whatever you want. You can't just believe whatever you want because on average, what human beings want to believe is they're good and they don't have to change. The base model man is a racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobe, and if you just go with your gut, your racist, sexist, homophobic gut, you do a lot of social harm. All right, you can't just believe whatever you want. You have to do a lot of work to assess what it is that you want to believe. All right? So science is the best way of going about thinking issues through exactly because it recognizes its flaws. It doesn't double down on them. That's apologetics. It tries to correct for those flaws. So science, you could look at it as a form of debate. And it's a form of debate in which we've agreed ahead of time on the rules, the standards of evidence, what it's going to take to change minds on scientific issues, and then we stick to that. We follow it. We don't fudge. We fudge. That's not a failing of science. That's a failing of capitalism. That is, in order to get published, all right, in order to run a journal, you have to make money. People have to read that journal and click on ads or buy copies of it. And people just don't read articles that don't find correlations between things or that are replication that fail to replicate or so the people reviewing journal articles for publication have money on their mind, and so only certain kinds of things can get published. And it's just really easy in this world of academic publishing to skew everything. You know how to play the game and you have money to research how to play the game. You can skew everything towards like quick fixes and medication. And I was just listening to an interview with one of the social scientists who wrote for the IPCC, and like world governments get to say what goes in the IPCC condensed report, and some of those countries are, they have the petrodollar, and so they don't let even the IPCC report say anything about fossil fuels, right? So there is absolutely corruption in science, but the beauty of science is scientists work to attempt to correct that corruption, and the church doesn't, and the Republican Party doesn't, and the Democratic Party doesn't necessarily, you know? So we agree in advance of the rules of evidence. We test our ideas. We don't say things are true. We say things are probable because we attempted to falsify them and we failed to falsify them. That's science in the ideal. There you go. In the end, science does not prove things true, but attempts to prove things false and sometimes fails, right? So here you have people saying, I know what's true, and I'm going to try and convince you of that. And here we have people saying, yeah, but we debunked that idea and that idea and that idea. And so what we're left with seems to be this or maybe this and that. And it's difficult to imagine something else that will absolutely change our minds if there's evidence for something else. But this stuff is totally debunked at this time, right? And those are two radically different ways of going about a search for truth. I already have it, and I'm trying to convince you, and it must be true if I'm able to convince, if I'm able to convince 7 million people that Bill Gates put microchips in the COVID vaccine, or I'm able to convince 100 million people that 5G is going to give everyone brain cancer. It's a communist plot to give everyone brain cancer. That must then be true. If it's convincing, it must be true. Completely different approach. Here, I'm humble, at least in principle. I'm humble about making truth claims, and I have weasel words and probabilities and cold hard data. Like, look, man, we tried to falsify this, and we can't do it, right? So that's what this series is going to be about. If indeed I hold to it and produce stuff, I have a couple of ideas already. Probably the first one will be about Gish Gallop, but it'll be about the stuff that makes falsehoods convincing in particular settings, so that you can spot when people are using these unfair tactics to convince you, ultimately to buy their products or vote for them. All right, see you in the next episode. Black Pill out.